Hello everyone, welcome to another video. In today's lesson, we are going to declare and initialize one array, and we are going to do some simple manipulation that are important using array. So basically, we know how to declare and initialize an array. So the name of the array is x of size 5 and it is of type integer. And there are 5 elements in this array: 1, 5, 8, 12, and 15. In order to print the array, let me just comment the rest of the code. So in order to print the array, we do it using a for loop. We start from 0, we go up to the size of the array, and then we are printing the ith element of x. So first time I is 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, and all the elements of the array is printed. Okay, great. So this we know from before. I equals 0. When I equals 0, it's like this: x 0, then I equals 1, x 1. So when x is 0, it's going to print the first element of the array like this. Then when I equals 1, it's going to print the second element of the array x, which is 5, etc. So we know how to do this. This is just to show you how we print the elements of the array. But if we would like to print specifically one element of the array, we can simply do something like this. So we name the array, and then we are going to call the uh, element of the array that is in braces. So in the braces we are saying 0, it means that call the first element of the array. Then we are having in the braces we have the number 1, which is going to call the second element of the array, and then the third and the fourth and the fifth elements of the array. So this way we also can print the elements of the array. But if we are only willing to print for example, the fourth element of the array, so the fourth element of the array is this one, because C++ starts from 0. So this is the first element, second, third, and the fourth element of the array is x, the name of the array, and in braces we type down the number 3. So it's going now to print us the fourth element of the array, which is 12. Okay, so this is another point. These are very basic operations, but I think it's important to know them before we dive into more advanced parts of the array. So basically, we can manipulate array elements. So initially, the first element of the array was equal to 1. Here, I'm assigning number 10 to be the first element of the array. So if I print again the array, we will see. Let me just print also the array here. Okay. So yeah, so we see that when we initialize the array, the elements were like 1, 5, 8, 12, 15. We printed it. It is here. It is printed here. Then using a line, we are trying to separate them from here. And then we assigned 10 to be the first element of the array and using this line. And as you see, instead of having 1, we are having 10 here. But the other elements remain the same. So we could assign it to the second element, for example. Okay. So when we are assigning it to the second element, the first element is the same. The second element, instead of being 5, it's 10 now. We could also manipulate more elements, like x equals like 68, for example. Okay. The fourth element. So in this case, we are changing two elements. The first element is the same in both arrays. The second element was 5 initially here, was 5, and now it's 10 because we assigned 10 to the first element. The third elements are the same. The fourth element, initially it was 12. Now then we set it to be 68, and the last elements are the same. So this way we can also manipulate the elements of an array manually. And the next interesting thing that we can do is the following. So we can initialize one integer called index to be 0. Instead of writing x within braces 0 equals 26, instead of writing this like above, we mentioned the example, we can write it like this. It's nicer to write it like this. So we, instead of within the braces, instead of writing the actual number 0, we can define an integer that is 0, and then we put the index integer in the braces. So this way we are also able to manipulate the array. So let's see. As you see, the first element was initially 1 and now it's 26 because 26 is assigned to the index element of the array x, and index equals 0. Therefore, the first element of array x equals 26 now, and we are printing the value of index in the end to know the value of the x. So let's do some further modifications here also. So here I am writing down that index index was 0, right? And we printed it, it's 0. Here index is 0. So if I again type x index equal 91, it's going to, because x was 0, index was 0, it's going to put 95 to be the first element of x. However, using this line, we are first increasing the value of index by 1. So index was 0, now it becomes 1. And then 91 is assigned to the second element of the array x. Let's run and see. Okay. So the first array, the second array is this one. So the first element of the array is set to 26, and the remaining elements are the same. We know it from here. However, when we are increasing the value of index first using plus plus, and then we write down the index in the braces, it is going to first increase index from 0, which was here, to 1, and then 91 is assigned to the second element of x. It is something like this now, equals 91. Okay, because now index becomes 1. So this line is exactly like this line. Because index was 0, we increase 0 by 1 value, so it becomes 1. In the braces, it becomes 1. And when it becomes 1, it means the second element of the array x. So when we are talking about the second element of the array x, 91 is assigned to it. So either writing this line or this line, they are going to do the same thing. And here, when we print again the index, we see that the index equals 1 because we increased its value. However, if the plus plus is after the index, this is interesting. So if plus plus is after the index, so we see the second array was 26 was set for the first element. So we know from before, and index is 0. But when the plus plus is after index, it means that 91 is assigned to the index element of the array X. And in this case, index equals 0. So when it simply means x0 equals 91. So this line equals this line. However, when 91 is assigned to the first element of the array X, afterwards, the index value is increased by 1. You see? So when we have the index, after that we have plus plus, it means that 91 is going to set to the indexed element of the array X, and in this case index is 0. Okay, 91 is going to assign to the first element of the array X. When the assignment is done, then increase the value of index by 1. So this is why we are seeing that the index value is 1, however 91 is assigned to the first element. So it's important to know where to put the plus plus depending on what we expect it to be. So let me just keep it afterwards. So 91 is going to assign to the first element of the array X, and then index is going to increase by 1 value, so index becomes 1. Let's do the last example here. When we are doing the last example here, okay, let's go up and review everything. So we initialized one array, we're printing the array, and this is the original array. Then we are changing the first element of this array. We initialize index to be 0. Then we say that the first element of the array X equals 26, and then we print the array. We print the array, we see that both arrays are having the same last 4 elements, but the first element is modified because of this line. And this line equals this line exactly because index equals 0. And then we print the value of index, it's 0. Then we are mentioning that, okay, now index is 0. Therefore, assign 91 to be the first element of the array X. Why first element? Because index is 0, it's going to assign it to the first element. When the assignment of 91 to the first element of array X is done, then increase the value of index by 1 using these two plus plus sign. So 91 and then we print the array. So this way 91 is assigned to the first element of the array. We see that it is modified from 26 to 91. But when we are printing the value of index, it's going to print value 1. And in the end, since index now equals 1, when we are writing this line, it means that put the 68 to be the index element of the array X, and index equals 1. Therefore, it's going to set 68 to the second element of the array X, and then it's going to print, the array. It's going to print the array. So we see that the 91 stays the same, but 68 is here as the second element of the array, and index equals 1. So this was a very good coding session, I think, because there are simple things, simple manipulation that we are going to do in later lectures. However, this lecture is a basic for manipulating the different elements of an array and working with plus plus index or index plus plus. So these are important to know a priori to solving further advanced example. Thank you for watching.